Hi everyone, I'm Josh.
And I'm Jim, and this is the Dapper Meeple.
This show is about our love of gaming, the games we play, and the gaming community around this passion.
So grab some snacks, pull up a chair, and join us at the table with your monocle and bowler hat. Hey kids, remember, this is an adult podcast and may contain adult language.
Also, the Dapper Meeple outfit, not required. On today's episode, we talk about our upcoming plans for Tidewater Comicon and the new king in tabletop crowdfunding.
We're also going to share some of our favorite small box games in Games We Play.
We also get to share news on BA Games' latest project and 3 others in our crowdfunding roundup.
All that and more on this episode of the Dapper Meeple. We've talked a lot about how there is no gatekeeper on the whole podcast thing. So when do you know when you've made it?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know about made it, but I think for us, or for me personally, when we broke 1,000 downloads, it was like, wow, there's 1,000 people that listen to us talk about stuff.
Right?
Which I thought was really cool. We talk a lot about the benefits that we've received just from doing a podcast, being able to meet people that we never would have been able to sit down at the same table with.
Right.
That suddenly are like, oh, you have a podcast? Sure, we'll come talk to you.
I feel like we're like solid C-level podcast, maybe low Bs at this point. Like at Comic-Con, when somebody who is big in the industry and popular goes, oh, I recognize your logo. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
We weren't great at marketing early on, so all we had out there was a logo. There was no name to associate to it.
Yeah, let's put that there. By the way, after that, the next statement was, I couldn't remember who it was, but it's a great logo.
Hey, we're proud to say that we have fixed that problem with our new pins, which we're going to have, and we made some stickers that have the name of the podcast on them.
Yep.
Even our new business card, which are amazing and done by Fire and Ash, which it's just a little wooden meeple, our meeple. It looks fantastic. And if you flip it over on the butt side, it says Dapper Meeple Podcast, so people can remember where the hell they got it from.
Yeah. Which, by the way, if you check out our Instagram, you'll be able to see pictures of most of these things. The pin should be here probably by the time the episode goes out.
Oh, yeah.
We'll probably throw up a couple pictures of those as well. And the best part is they spin.
They got spinners. Yeah. I feel like we're moving along. I'm happy with what we do. This is some kind of therapy for me as well. We have a good time when we record. I don't know, you guys don't get to hear the behind the scenes stuff, but we should set a camera up because you find out things like there are games that we're not really interested in. Oops, all Nazis or something.
And you thought Secret Hitler was bad.
For years now, since we started this little endeavor of ours, we have been putting in an application for our local Comic-Con to sit on Artist Alley.
Yeah.
And up until now, we have been rejected. Fair.
Yeah, for sure.
But this year, June 28th and 29th at the Virginia Beach Convention Center, Tidewater Comicon is going on. And if you would like, you can find us sitting in Artist Alley. So it's the smaller tables. We're going to have a lot of artists around us, crafters, people that are making stuff, people that are doing really cool stuff that we all enjoy seeing anyway. Probably a couple artists over there, probably a couple of authors and things like that.
Yeah.
And then there'll be this goofy booth with lots of meeples hanging off of it and possibly a microphone just randomly sticking out into the aisle.
Yeah.
That's going to be us. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely if you are local to the Virginia Beach area or are looking to drive in for the couple days for the Comic-Con, by all means, come and see us. We would love to talk with you guys. We're going to have a couple things for sale. We'll have our new pins, which we're really excited about. May have a couple other small knickknacks, but the big thing is just kind of to be there, hang out, meet some new people, and see how it goes.
Right? I feel like most of the people that have listened to us have come back with positive reviews. I get a couple every now and then from people that are like, this one segment was a little quiet for this 10 seconds. And I was like, all right, thanks. But for the most part, I feel like we've done well.
Just be like, I'm an audio engineer and then walk away.
I feel like we bring some good energy to the podcasting world, though. Like when we sit down to record, first of all, prepping the episode is hilarious. It never fails to not be a lot of fun for us. So by the time we get here, we're actually putting the mics on and stuff. We're in a good mood.
Yeah, usually, for sure.
Yeah.
we try to make it fun. We try to talk about things that are interesting. There's a lot of negativity out there, and we try to be something different than that. So we appreciate all of you who listen and download.
And again, we like us. So the whole point of that was Tidewater Comicon, 28th through 29th, the Virginia Beach Convention Center. If you're in the area, stop by and see us. It's not a bad convention for a small kind of local convention. It's usually a good time. They still have lots of good panels and stuff on there. I think every year they do a cosplay contest.
Yep.
Come do Comic-Con stuff with us. So while you can still afford it. Because if you're in the board game industry, stuff's about to get expensive.
So obviously with these kind of talks have been happening since November, right? And if you don't know what we're talking about board games and tariffs. The board game industry is a luxury hobby. We've had this conversation before on here how not everybody can afford to buy the amount of board games that even we own or be able to pay some of the prices that some of these Kickstarters kind of things are asking. With the current administration and their thoughts on tariffs, there's potential that it's going to continue to go up. Arcane Wonders president Robert Geislinger talks about us very specifically. He says board games are about to become more expensive because of the tariffs. And in an article on Board Game Wire, he actually breaks down some of the kind of costs of creating, publishing board games and what tariffs do to that. Unfortunately, most board game components are made in China right now. So any tariffs on Chinese imports are going to affect those.
There was something in there originally about board games were an exception at first.
Yeah, there were some, without going too deep into it, there were some exception rules as well as some minimums that you could get underneath. Those are still currently active. They were originally taken away, but now they are active again temporarily. The current outlook that everyone believes is that those are going to go away and there are going to be across the board like blanket tariffs.
And if there's a tariff on stuff coming from China, that means when it gets here, the importer and the distributor are going to end up paying a higher price than they are right now.
Right. And then that cost is going to get put onto the customer, the end user.
Just like it did, was it 5 years ago?
Yeah.
We played this game before.
So unfortunately, I feel like we're in a different place now with general economic sense with the way inflation has been, that people have less disposable income. Many people do. So, we'll see how it shakes out. Unfortunately, I think this hurts smaller publishers more than larger ones that can absorb a little bit of that. Whereas smaller publishers have absolutely zero room on their margins to be able to adjust for that outside of pushing that cost onto the consumer. So hopefully this doesn't cause the end of a bunch of small publishers, but at the end of the day, we'll just have to see how it goes.
And it's one of those things that I don't think I understood real well until when we were at PAX.
Yeah.
We actually got to see behind the scenes and see just how tight those margins are. For a small game producer that's producing, 1,500 copies in their first run, you're talking about a $60, $70 game, and they're making $9,
maybe.
Yeah. Off of each game profit, because they're paying for the manufacturing, they're paying for the art, they're paying for their company. If they have employees, they're paying those fees to bring it into the country. So there is not much there.
Yeah.
Whereas a big company that's making 10,000 copies of a game, they're going to get that cheaper.
Yeah.
So it's just like why all of you go to Costco. You know what I'm talking about.
Buy it in bulk.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, hopefully we don't see smaller publishers get pushed to the wayside, but I don't see how some of them are not going to, unfortunately. But this goes back to, this is a luxury hobby, right? No one is required to buy board games to live. Some might argue that, but in reality, that's what it is. But yeah, if you find a game that you love, and especially if it's from a small publisher, don't be afraid to tell people about it. Don't be afraid to reach out to them. I can tell you now, having been involved in this industry, most of the people that we've met that are small publishers are really good people. A lot of them are just trying to do something that they love.
Right. I don't think I've talked to anybody from this like small publisher community that has jumped in this to be like, I'm going to be a millionaire game designer one day.
No.
No. No, they're trying to get by, maybe have a little bit of extra cash come out of it, maybe have their games get featured in some place that likes to talk about games that may or may not be the Dice Tower. I'm just saying. But yeah, it's going to be rough. We feel like our niche has been these indie games
Sure.
since we've started. We seek out a lot of those, especially like on the Kickstarter or Gamefound. Um, and I like that. I like that we're getting new games in the market. And gosh, Parks and Potions, the guys over at BA Games, We're Sinking. There's so many games that we have found that have been really good.
Yeah.
But again, these people are not making a lot of profit off of this.
No. Most of them have second jobs, some of them third jobs that they are doing to make income because this doesn't make the ends meet. So this is oftentimes more passion projects and something they just love doing and love being a part of.
Go find the big games that you like. Play your games from Come On, play your Roxley games, those big publishers. But take a minute and look around for some of the smaller ones, especially in the next couple of years. I think it's going to be valuable. And most of them do start their games on a crowdfunding platform of some type.
Yeah, and speaking of that, we've had this discussion a couple times how Gamefound was looking to dethrone the king, as it were, of Kickstarter, and it looks like they're starting to gain some ground. So much so that the CEO of Gamefound recently put out a statement and said, "Our ambition for 2025 is to be number one in tabletop."
So the details there, number one in tabletop. Not all Kickstarter is tabletop.
Right.
I've backed Kickstarters for some crazy stuff, along with the ridiculousness that we just back at the tabletop side. Sure, I think that's more possible. When I first heard that, I was like, dude, Kickstarter big. And then I was like, oh, okay, tabletop.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Gamefound can make a good run at it.
Yeah, this kind of comes off the heels of last year, them putting a 49% profit increase over the previous year that they've seen. So there's who knows? There's a chance they really start to. They did sign the deal last year with Come On.
Yep.
To be exclusively on Gamefound. A few more of those kind of lock in and they're off to the races.
Right. We've backed a lot of stuff that's come off of there. Our recent edition, or most of the recent edition, was the guys that we've talked about for a while over with the Tebaru system, which is that electronic board game that makes a board game a lot more responsive. Their first game, The Bad Karmas, was a boss battler type game that we got to sit down and play, and it was awesome. And so we got our hands on it when their second game came out, which was Milan Uprising, and it is a Vampire the Masquerade game with all the licensing that goes along with that. But that was put on Gamefound, which was good. One of the things that I like that Gamefound does is that stretch pay option.
Yeah, I think that's something that's become very popular across all different facets of purchasing and commerce nowadays, is the ability to break things up into payments.
Yeah.
So people are looking to take advantage of something like that. So yeah, we're excited, of course, for the Tebaru system. So once we get that broken out and played a little bit, I'm sure we'll throw an episode of that together. But who knows? Maybe by next year, we'll be talking about how Gamefound is the new top dog in tabletop.
And next up, games we play. So I wanted to do this segment. We've done some stuff like this before, but what we're going to look at is a couple of small box games that we have in our collection that are a lot of fun that we think other people may enjoy.
Yeah, this is by no means an end-all be-all of small box games because there are a ton of them out there.
And it feels like there's getting to be more of them. Like that is its own category that is growing rapidly, and it makes sense. For me, small box games is if I can fit it into the not largest pocket of my backpack, that's a small box.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. If you can stack, let's say, 6 of them in a Calyx shelf, that's probably a small box,
right? And we've got a bunch of those. Like we have a couple of shelves that have 15 games in them, and I'm like, oh yeah, those ones. So we picked out 4 of them that we like, that we think are really good, that have some variety in the gameplay.
Yeah.
Let's get started with 20 Strong.
Yeah, so 20 Strong is actually a new edition that we picked up at Gen Con this year. It's one that I've had my eye on for a little while. It is by Chip Theory Games. It is a solo game. We've talked about many times before. I enjoy solo. I do play pretty good mini solo games. I even built myself a table so I'd be able to play them. But 20 Strong is a dice-based game. And depending on which module you want to play, because there are currently 3 different modules, and I think they have 2 more that are on the way. They finished crowdfunding about middle of last year. You can play a whole different type of game. So the 20 Strong comes from the amount of dice that you have. So you start the game with 20 dice, and that's the main component. There are five different kinds of dice that have a number of hits and crits on them, depending on the type of dice it is. And then, of course, you have 3 of them that track things like your health, a strategy meter, and like a recovery. So the games themselves play pretty similar to each other, but there are little quirks that kind of change the rules and what you're actually doing. It's a really fun game. It's really a really small box too, which beats this list. But it's one of those that you can break out, set it up pretty quickly. It doesn't have a huge table space because it's mostly just cards and dice. And then play for 15, 20 minutes and then pack it back up and you're good to go.
Yeah, I played through it here on our table, and it was, like you said, not a huge presence, which a lot of the small box games, they don't.
Yeah.
They are smaller. They're usually less complicated. And it was a lot of fun. At first, there were some mechanics that it took me a second to figure out. I think that it's not overly complicated, but there is a certain degree of complication that comes along with having to determine what you can and can't do when you're trying to defeat each of the monsters.
Yeah.
Like you've got to read through. There was a couple of them where we had to check the rule book to figure out exactly what it meant. Like we figured it out.
Yeah, it's not extremely difficult. Now, you played the Solar Sentinels
Right.
version, and each version comes in its own card box. So you have the main box that has your dice in it, and then you just drop one of the card boxes in there with it, and it's all a nice clean package. There's also one based off of their game Too Many Bones, which is more fantasy themed. And then there is another one based off their game Hoplomachus Victorum, which is like gladiator battle type. And
Sounds very Latin.
yeah, those go in order of like complexity.
Okay.
So Solar Sentinels is the easiest one. That's the base game that you would get if you just bought 20 Strong. And then the other 2 are just add-ons. And of course, the ones that they have coming out as well are going to play the same way.
Same basic idea so the one that we played, or the one that I played, the Solar Sentinels, you're doing basically it's a boss battler, but you've got to defeat other enemies to get up to it. You, like you said, start off with a pool of 20 dice that are 6 different colors. The lowest efficient dice have less hits on them. And as you move into the different colors, there are more and more chances to hit, and each dice does have 1 crit opportunity on it. But as you roll the dice to try to get the number to beat what the character or the creature's hit points are, your dice become exhausted. And then you have to build this mechanic where you get some of those dice back each turn.
It's very much resource management where the dice are your resources.
Yeah.
So you have to play carefully not to overcommit, but you also want to get enough because if you don't, then you take damage. So it's a very nice push and pull type of mechanic when it comes to wanting to push it to try and roll the damage to make sure you hit it, because obviously there are a lot of misses, especially on your lower dice. But at the same time, you don't want to exhaust your entire dice pool, or else you might not have enough for the next encounter.
When I finally got to the boss, because you have 3 stacks of creatures, and you have to get one of those stacks all the way down before you're ready to take one of the bosses. And I did, and I was like, you know what? Last game, I'm going to nuke it. And I grabbed all the dice I had left. And then as we were talking, we realized that's actually not the best play because of the way that boss was set up. Yeah.
There are a lot of interesting mechanics like crits don't count, or you can only apply dice to this monster or two enemies that are like pairs of certain colors, or there can only be like 1 color of each on an enemy. So there are some really interesting restrictions that make you have to think about what you're rolling and what you can actually apply to them.
things like that. So really great single player game. You break it out. If you've got a notebook sized table,
Yeah, pretty much.
you've got enough room.
Yeah.
So just don't roll wild. Like I've noticed this is my new pet peeve, right? We've got a lot of really nice rolling trays at the house. And then we've just got some that are just rolling trays. I do using our tray from the Weather Dragon.
Yep.
Which is so beautiful. Dragon skin inside of it, leather. It looks really great. And I encourage using those now because dice go flying across the table because, I don't know, people can't control their dice rolling. So just
Gonna start giving people cups if they
Right?
don't.
just a PSA, I'm going to treat you like a Yahtzee player if you don't knock it off. So control your dice out there. Be responsible. The next game that we have is a 2-player game. We're talking about Onitama from Arcane Wonders.
Yeah, so this game, if you've ever played like a chess-like game, it is a 2-player heads-up type game where there are only 5 pieces on each side of the board.
Right.
So it's nice and simple. What I love about this game is as you're playing, you have 2 cards in front of you. Your opponent has 2 cards, and there's one in the middle. On these cards, they are move cards, and they'll tell you which way you can move any of the pieces. As soon as you use one of those cards, you switch it out with the card in the middle, and then those are your new 2 move cards for your next turn. What I like about this game is the fact of perfect information. So when growing up, I was a chess player. I actually played all throughout high school, went to tournaments, actually won a tournament. But I've always enjoyed that aspect of strategy games that you knew what could happen, right? Chess is obviously more complicated because there's a whole lot of different moves that can happen. But in this game, it's very straightforward. It's nice. There are only 5 total moves that can be made at any one time. Now, on the move cards, you do have multiple options on each move card, but you'll be able to see, oh, he doesn't have any move cards that will allow him to attack this space. So that space is safe. So the goal of the game, you have 4 pawn cards and 1 like master, or 4 pawn pieces and 1 masterpiece. The master starts in the back middle of your board at the gate. The goal is either to capture the opposing master or to get your master to the opposing gate.
So your board that you're playing on is a 5x5 grid, and I know the copy that we had, it came with the neoprene playmat.
Yeah.
I think that's standard for this. Right? It's tight, but you only got 5 pieces to maneuver anyway.
Yeah.
I think it works really well. I liked the movement aspect of it where you're not only picking the move that you're about to make, but you really do have to look and see what your opponent has and then think about whatever move you make is going to go to that center. So they're going to get it in the next round. So you're really planning your movement. Like you said, all that perfect information that you have, you've got to consider all of it and not just go willy-nilly, which was my first run through. I was like, all right, let's do this, baby.
Yeah. I think I also like that this game is really fast.
Yeah, it is.
So 1 round is probably 10 minutes at most.
Right. Less if you go in all willy-nilly.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
But yeah, so with this game, it's really quick. It's a nice, pretty good strategy game, but the game comes with about 30 different movement cards. So there's a lot of replayability in it because you can just swap out the 5 cards that you're using or get different combinations or something like that. So there's always a different like move set that's being played in the game.
And it's a lot like chess where you capture the opponent's pieces. And the 2 ways to win is either to capture the main piece or where that main piece begins is a little gate. You have to get your masterpiece into the opponent's gate. So you can win by way of the stone by taking them out or the way of the wind by moving into their gate.
Yep. So all in all, very fun, quick game. It is one of the larger boxes on this list, just in size wise, but it's still, I think I would still classify it as small box.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I could fit this in a backpack, no problem. Traveling with it, still carry plenty of other stuff. We have plenty of games where we actually have a special backpack to carry them in. You don't need that for
Looking at you, Marvel
Brony
Zombies.
Yeah, I need a special truck to carry that thing. But yeah, I think it's still a small box game. It doesn't take up a lot of room. It doesn't have a big table presence. Yeah, definitely falls into this small box category. Not overly complicated, but one of those easy to learn, hard to master type games for sure.
Yeah. So the next game we want to talk about is from a company that is known for their small box games. This game is Rafter 5 from Oink Games.
And when we say small box game here, this is the smallest box in
Yeah.
this list. It's about the size. It's just a little bit longer than a playing card, and probably about an inch and a half by an inch and a half. It's small,
Yeah.
but it packs a pretty big punch. I saw this game and picked it up at Gen Con. It looks like a lot of fun, and I was like, "Oh, I've seen people playing it," and I wanted to try it out. And it is a rafting survival treasure chest collection game. I don't know what they call this mechanic, but it is very much a dexterity based game.
I love it. That should be the official description. Yeah, so in this game, you actually use the box as the base of the raft,
Hmm.
and you have 5 rafters that stand on top. They're little meeple pieces of various shapes and sizes.
Yeah, yeah, they covered the entire spectrum of possible body shapes.
And with this, you have small little planks that are surrounding the raft. And on the one side, they're a plank, but on the other side, it's water. So obviously, your raft is in the middle of the water. To play the game, though, you have to pick up one of the planks and you have to slide it underneath or pick up one of the rafters and then set it on top of one of the planks so that it's sticking off the raft. And then you have to take one of your treasure chests and place it on that plank that you just placed.
It's one of those where if you knock things off and treasure chests hit the water, if they're your chests, you just recover them. But if it's an opponent's chest, everybody has this penalty board in front of them with 5 spots.
Yep.
Where if you knock somebody else's stuff off, that's not good. So you take the penalty for that. First person to gain 5 penalties loses, and everybody else wins, is how they wrote it. So semi cooperative.
Everyone else is not a loser.
Yeah.
Uh, but no, this one's actually pretty fun. It's a nice, quick, light little dexterity game
Mhm.
that has like a definite conclusion.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Right.
does.
It's not like you can continue building the raft up over and over because those meeples are only going to hold so much. And eventually, when they fall, like it all falls.
And one of the rules is that when you are placing a plank, you have to put it on, it has to touch one of the other planks.
Yep.
And then it has to go under whatever meeple you're using. There were a couple of times where, especially as you get deeper and deeper into the game, the raft gets more and more complicated. And when it does go, it goes big.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And that was a lot of fun. And it entirely can get to the point where when it does fall, whoever did it, the game's over.
Yeah.
You're getting 5 penalties right there.
Absolutely. But it's, again, it is super small. It does not take up a lot of table presence, but it is a fun little kind of unique game.
Mm-hmm.
It plays up to 6 players.
I think the highest that I've played it at is 3, 4. So I can imagine with 6 players how this is going to go.
Yeah, it probably goes pretty quickly because I know when we played with 3 players, we got about 5 rounds in,
Yeah.
I would say. There were a couple, though. Oh, this is a safe play. I can take this one because if it falls, it's my chest and that's
Yeah.
okay. But yeah, so no, that one, though, was really fun. Nice, quick, like dexterity game that's different from the other ones that we have.
And we said too, Oink Games, like their booth was full of these small card-sized boxes of games. That's what they're known for right now.
Yeah, so some of their other ones that you've probably heard of are Scout, as well as Modern Art and A Fake Artist Goes to New York are 3 of their popular ones that have been out there before, but they're all that same small, tiny box is what they shoot for, but they pack a lot of game into a really small box.
That's right. For our last one, we've talked about Moonrakers before.
Yeah.
And we have bought all of the Moonrakers. So the box that we originally bought is much bigger now. With the Titan expansion, it had the room for all the stuff. So Moonrakers, not a small box game. Moon Rollers is Ivy Studios' answer to needing Moonrakers in a small box.
Because you can't take the other one in a small box.
Not at all. Not at all. I saw this one too. We picked it up. I do regret not buying all of the fancy dice and the special pieces, so I've got to go back and do that now. Because it was definitely one of those, I get it. It is from the Moonrakers universe. Like all of the artwork is the same, and the general idea of what you're doing is really similar. but we're like, let's just see. And we played it, and I like had a blast with this one.
Yeah. It's very much in the feeling of Moonrakers, but it is a very different game. I do Ivy Studios just in general. They always do really good components for
Yes.
all of their games. Their production quality is always through the roof. We watched them build their booth at Gen Con because it was not oh, they just came in and set up a couple tables. No, they brought in stacks of plywood and built mounts for TVs and all of this stuff there on the showroom floor. But yeah, they know how to go over the top. And this game is no different. The card quality is really great, especially with the upgrades that you can get. They even threw in like a free expansion for Moonrakers in it, which was really cool.
And I wasn't paying attention or expecting it. So as I'm shuffling cards, I'm like, what is this? And then I found the card that said, stop, don't shuffle these in. This is for Moonrakers. Like, oh, so we had to fix that. But yeah, which I think that's cool. Again, that kind of links those two really popular games, very different games, but in the same universe. So I like that coming from them.
Yeah, so in Moon Rollers, what you're trying to do is recruit crew members. And each crew member has a specific amount of different items that you need to recruit them. And you'll get those items by rolling the dice.
So the requirements for recruiting each of these crew members are the same requirements that you used in Moonrakers, right?
Yep.
You have to roll thrusters, reactors, shields, damage.
Yeah, the iconography is all the same. So
Right.
it's very clean. The dice mechanic adds where you can get wilds, of course, and you can get extra dice to roll. So there is that element, which is really cool. The crew members have abilities on them that help you, like you can turn extra roll dice into double thrusters or double reactors, depending on who you have. There's ones that let you save dice from your rolls to use later. There's some that say, hey, if you don't roll any of this certain type, then you can automatically reroll 2 dice. So stuff like that is really cool. I like that. The hazard mechanic in this one is interesting as well.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. And all of the dice rolling is important because what you're trying to do, I really like the push your luck mechanic.
Yeah.
There are times when I'm not good at it, and it's probably why I don't gamble because I would just not do well. Because there was a couple of times where I was like, I know better. I should not roll these dice again.
Yeah.
And I did it anyway
Yeah.
because that's where we live. But you're rolling those dice. You start off, you have the way they explain it is you have 3 pools of dice, right? You have the roll pool that you're using, you have the extra supply pool, and then you have your committed pool. So you roll your dice, you pick a crew member that you're going to go and try to recruit, and then each one of them has those requirements, and then you pick a requirement that you're going to work on. So you roll the dice, and you have to commit at least 1 dice to whatever that requirement is, right?
Yes.
So if they have 3 thrusters, you've got to roll 3 of the thruster symbol or a wild, and you have to commit 1 dice in each of your rolls. If you get to a point where you can't commit a dice, you bust. All of the progress you've made that round all comes off. And basically, you're going to lose any kind of experience or any kind of prestige that you would have had.
Yep.
It's really cool. What I like about it is when you're recruiting, they might have 3 or 4 requirements, and you can complete some of those requirements and then just stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when that crew member gets completed, even if you're not the one who completed it, if you had any completed requirements, you get the victory points for those requirements.
Right, which they call prestige, which again in Moonrakers is how you count up whether you're the best captain or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Really fun. I had a blast sitting down and playing this. Like you said, the hazard mechanic that they put in, again, hazards were something that was in Moonrakers. Anytime you complete one of the requirements that has the hazard symbol on it, you draw 2 and keep 1.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a balance game there as well.
Yeah, because the person with the most hazards, which as you pull the hazard token, some of them will have hazard symbols on them, some of them don't. Usually the ones that are worth more points have more hazard symbols on them. But the person with the most hazard symbols doesn't get to count those extra points, but everyone else does. So it's a catch-up mechanic because usually the person with the most hazard symbols has completed the most things on the different contracts.
Right. So they've completed most of the requirements.
Yep.
So they already have prestige points, are probably already in the lead. So yeah, I like that. Everything about this game was good. Even like the base components are good. I just want the ones in metal,
Sure.
as I always do.
Yeah,
But yeah,
the dice are always nice. The hematite dice.
are really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have them for Moonrakers. So now I got to build this one up.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's a fantastic though small box. If you love a good dice roller, like it doesn't play super fast. It does have some meat to it, but at the same time, it doesn't take up a lot of space.
And it's 2 to 5 players. One of the things that when we were putting this list together is we definitely wanted to start off with a good single player game and kind of work our way up to
Yep.
multiple players, because a lot of the small box games can be 1 to 2 players, and then there are a lot now, like even Rafter 5.
Yeah,
Is
playing up to 6. Yeah,
So when you're sitting in line at PAX or Gen Con waiting for your show to start for an hour, this is the game to break out.
for sure.
Yeah. Yep. There's a lot of these out there. We have some others that we had considered as we're going through this. One of them is from an artist we're going to have come on and talk to us here at some point. That is a really good game, and it's like a 4 to 6 player games.
Yep. It's called Curses and Covens.
Right. Tons of small box games. The D&D based one, Dungeon Mayhem, I still think is a small box game, even with the big expansion.
You got all the entirety of the Tiny Epic series.
Yeah.
You can take your pick on what style of game you want out of there, but all of those are tiny boxes.
Flux
as well. Nice little card game. There's just so many out there that are smaller box games now. And there's a lot of really good ones as well. It just goes to show you don't need a huge box with a bunch of minis to still have a good game.
What we're saying is size does not matter.
Just a little sunshine. Time to make you mine. I can do all of your tricks. I can give you all your kicks. Feeling like a roller coaster. Come and take a ride with me. Up so high to go no faster.
And now, our crowdfunding roundup. We've got 3 great games that we found, but before we get started, we've got a special announcement for a new Kickstarter that we think everybody should definitely keep their eyes on.
Yeah, so we are talking about BA Games' next project. If you're a fan of the show or have listened to probably more than one episode, you have heard us talk about the guys from BA Games. They are fantastic. They have already made 2 amazing games in Cult of the Deep and Forges of Ravenshire. They just put up their Kickstarter pre-page for their newest game, Goats and Goblins.
We got to test this game at PAX Unplugged this last year, and it was a blast. It is a very simple game. It's just a card game, so it definitely falls in with the theme of the small box game this time around. We played with 5 other people in the group?
Yeah.
And it was just such a good time.
Oh, yeah. It was an absolute blast. So in the game, you are trying to lead the rest of the party down certain levels into here to find the lost goats.
And you are a group of goblins, and goblins keep goats. That's science.
Along the way, you can also get treasure, which is a wonderful thing that goblins also enjoy. But the cave is rather unstable.
Yeah, everybody will take a turn leading, and the fun mechanic here is the leader decides how deep we're going into the cave.
Yeah.
Right? Which each level is another turn of the card off the top of the deck. And as the goblin party, you decide individually if you're in or out.
Yeah. And the really fun part is you also get cards where you can shove the leader further down into the cave, which is wonderful. You can also get cards that will change your allegiance from being in or out. Just a lot of really fun mechanics in what we played there at PAX. I'm sure it's been refined even more since then. So I'm really excited to see once they put up the official Kickstarter page. In the meantime, though, there is a page. If you go to Kickstarter or if you go to our Instagram, we actually put a link for it where you can go and put notify me so that you can be a follower of the game. And as soon as it launches, you'll be able to see all the goodies that they have on offer.
So let's get to the actual planned crowdfunding roundup that we have for you for projects that are either ready for you to go find and pledge on, and one late pledge, which is something that happens over on Gamefound. And we'll talk about that when we get to it. But first, let's start out with a game that I saw pop up and I was immediately interested in. And this is Cannibal World: Fight to Survive in a Brutal Dystopian World by Witty Games.
Yeah, so this game, and like the other three that we have here today, are all card games. We wanted to keep it on theme with small box games from the rest of the episode. Cannibal World, though, looks like it's a heads-up game. Plays either 2 or 4 players, where you get to choose one of the factions and fight it out in this kind of dystopian hellscape. One of the really cool things that struck me about this game is using the food tokens as resources. So you can only activate cards if you have the food tokens to activate them. And you use those for offense, for defense, for special abilities that the cards may have. So that being a limited resource is actually really thematic for it being a post-apocalyptic world.
And the resource management on this, you are limited on what you can do on each turn. There are 4 different groups that seem to play different depending on what they are. There are rats, there are dogs, there are cats, and then there are rejects, which are the human scum, and totally unhinged is the way they're described. The artwork on it is really good. The art was done by Oscar Martin, who you might not know that name, but I'm sure that you have seen some of his work.
Yeah, he has worked on Tom and Jerry, a bunch of other Disney movies as well. So out there, you've probably seen his animations, even if you did not know who he was or know his name. But the artwork on this is really cool. It is very kind of cartoonish, but also definitely post-apocalyptic.
Right? And there's like cartoon blood. Like you're cannibals. I like it. That's what kind of drew me to it. It looks like a lot of fun. It'll play either 2 or 4 players. So it is a direct combat type game.
Yep.
So let's look at levels.
So the first one to get the deluxe box Kickstarter edition comes in at about $37 US. So that comes with 200 cards, 50 tokens, rule book, and they have space built into the box for sleeves, which is really nice because a lot of people don't. Mm-hmm. And then there are extra space to fit the future Bugs and Gladiators expansion that they have planned to come out. And one additional future expansion that has not been named yet.
Ooh, I love the mystery. The next tier up, you actually get the expansions when they come out as well. And that's going to run you about $50 US.
So the next one is their deluxe bundle, which is the deluxe box plus a promo card, and you get custom sleeves for all the cards plus the expansions. And that'll run you about $69.
Which still is not bad. Moving up with the duelist bundle, you get all of that, plus custom sleeves, 2 playmats, the Bugs and Gladiators expansion, and you'll be able to select a color or pencil later in the pledge manager. That one's going to run you about $94. You had me at playmats.
They always get us with the playmats.
And then, of course, there's an all-in bundle. So it's got all of the goodies from the deluxe box, the promo cards, the expansion, 4 playmats with different designs, and the art book, which, like we said, the art is really cool on these. And that one's only going to run you about $136.
Yeah. So all in all, depending on where you want to come in, this seems like a really cool game, especially if you enjoy heads-up card games. It reminds me of something maybe like Radlands, but doesn't seem the way it plays is definitely different, but more like art style and theme.
Yeah, the theme definitely felt that way. Even looking at the play style, it's definitely different, but it is that one-on-one, head-to-head setup, which I really like. They're expecting to deliver in January of 2026. They have already funded about 10 times more than what they asked for. And as of recording, there's 22 days left on the project.
So the next one we want to talk about is, of course, another card game. This one kind of shifts a little bit from being kind of a head-to-head card game to a more battling against the game, and that is Fame and Fable. This one actually looks really interesting. The art to me is different.
Mm-hmm.
So this is by the designer is actually the main artist who did most of the stuff on it. In the video for the Kickstarter, he talks about how he's always been a fan of fantasy works, Lord of the Rings, Redwall, that sort of stuff, but he never really got a chance to do art for that. And then after getting involved in RPGs, He said that he wanted to do something more like that, and that's where this idea came from. You recruit allies to fight the different monsters. There are a bunch of different ones with different levels, and you are trying to gain the most victory points. All right, so on your turn, you have a few different actions you can take. You can recruit allies or get items from the market. You can use traits on any allies that you've already deployed, and you can combat monsters. So the allies and things you use, they have basic attacks on them, but they also have different traits that are their special abilities. And of course, there are all sorts of different items that you can use. So your goal is to use those allies to defeat monsters and even some legendary monsters, but the goal is to get fame, right? Fame is the victory points in this game. So that is what you're shooting for to be able to win. This game does play 1 to 4 players, so there is a solo mode in it, which is really cool. I always like when a game includes a solo mode, especially if it's intended. But yeah, this one looks really cool.
My favorite part about the video that you get to watch where he explains where this all came from was as he's talking about how much he's enjoyed fantasy and he got into RPGs. It can't be that hard to make a game, and it was. Like,
Yeah.
you can hear the realization when it hits.
So the starter pledge, the core pledge, is going to run you about $39, but it gets you 1 copy of the game and any applicable stretch goals that they reach. Right. So obviously shipping and stuff costs you more, but $39 is not a bad entry point, especially for a standard card game.
Next up is a Legend Pledge, and they say that it's perfect for those looking for the ultimate playing experience. With that, you're going to get the game, the deluxe edition, the Legend expansion, upgraded game board, which is double layered, nice, and upgraded wooden tokens. And that's going to run you about $70 US.
And that's all the pledges that are available. They did have a $500 pledge.
Oh, yeah.
You could actually design an ally card, which is really cool. But again, unfortunately, by the time you hear this, those are already gone.
Yeah, apparently they only had 20 of those, and those actually ran for about $635 US.
Wow. Yeah.
Hey, good on you guys for supporting what you love.
So this game, as of time of recording, has about 13 days left. So it's definitely one you'll need to jump on quickly if you want to get in on it. It is fully funded, so you don't have to worry about that. And they are
looking to deliver January 2026. All right, and for the last project, we're going to kick over to Gamefound. We talked a little bit about them at the beginning of the episode. I like some of the stuff Gamefound is doing. I really like that it is completely game focused. So we're going to see how this goes, but we thought we would share them a little bit of love, especially since we have been accepted on the list of their board game playtesters. So hopefully we'll have some creators reaching out to us to try out their games and tell them what we think. But today we're going to talk Liars and Looters by Floating Forge.
Yeah, so this game has already gone through its crowdfunding phase. It is now in Pledge Manager, which you can find on Gamefound. Pledge Manager did just open up within the past week, so you probably have somewhere between 15 to 25 days at least before they close the Pledge Manager. They haven't put out an official date yet, but if this is something you want, definitely hop in on it because it could go quickly. Now, this game is another card game that plays 3 to 6, and in this game, each of you takes a faction card, and on the faction card are listed specific resources that you need to get to basically fulfill your faction's request. Right. Then you draw a hand of these tarot cards that have the resources on them. And then you get to play the actual game where the name Liars and Looters comes from. You start by saying that you are going to trade a certain card. Whether or not the card you actually put on the table to trade is what you're saying you're trading is up to you. That's the liar part. And then everyone else at the table also puts a card down and says that they will trade you that certain resource for it. You decide who you want to trade with, and then you find out whether or not you can trust your friends at the table.
Which is always good to know. Also, some of us need therapy.
But this one looks really cool. I like the art style on it. It's unique, but it's a very simple game that I think would be fun for a larger group. It plays very quickly, only around 15 minutes. So nice and easy, being just a quick card game. You could break it out, as we talked about the other games, sitting in line places, or when you just got a few minutes to kill with a group of people that you're with.
The base game you can get for about $22. You can step that up to the Greatest Adventure, which is in the all-in game, which again comes with that nice playmat and the expansion, and that one's going to run you about $50. And then there's if you really want to show these guys some love, there's the Looter for Life pledge, which is going to hit at probably about 500 US.
Yep.
You will receive every all-in and every board game that we will release in the future automatically, including all unlocked stretch goals of those respective campaigns. So let me tell you something. If you think this company's something you want to jump behind, Floating Forge is giving you a chance to really get in with them on the ground floor.
Yeah, 100%. That is a unique pledge I don't think I've really seen before. It's pretty interesting. In today's world where you have companies, Mythic Games, that are not fulfilling Kickstarters, it's interesting to have a pledge level like that.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, who knows? Maybe there's a few people out there that like what they see from them and are interested in some of their new stuff. If that pledge is for you, by all means, go support them. We were talking about supporting small publishers. Now's your chance if that's something you want to do.
I bet if we stretch pay that thing, we'll be good. I love Gamefound. All right. And with that,
Astral Scout Raven stares down the Swarm Lord and the 3 monsters of its entourage. She must defeat all 3 enemies before she can even try to hit the boss.
gathering her dice, she only rolls 6 hits, only enough to take out 1 monster. She applies the hits and rolls again.
4 more hits are enough to take out number 2 of the entourage.
With her last roll, a hit and a crit defeat the last monster.
Unfortunately, she's out of strategy phases, and the Swarm Lord attacks, defeating the Astral Scout.
For the Dapper Meeple, I'm Jim.
And I'm Josh. Good night, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around and listening to our show.
If you enjoyed it, let me ask you a favor. Follow us and leave a like wherever you get your podcasts. It'll really help us out.
And if you have anything to say back to us, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook by searching for the Dapper Meeple. Or you can email us at dappermeeplegaming@gmail.com.
And as always, we'll save you a seat at the table.